morning, my friend. I will be right with you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How the heck are you on this fine Wednesday morning? What is going on? Drop me a note in the comments. Drop me a note in the chat. Let me know you are here. Good morning, Mitch. How are you, my friend? It is good to see you over on the website, mikecameron.ca/live. Good morning, Anne. Anne has opted for Facebook this morning. Good morning, Ken. How are you, my friend? It is fantastic to have you guys here. I am super thrilled. If this is your first time here, welcome to Men Up with Mike. This is episode 147, I believe we're at now. My name's Mike Cameron, and I will be your host. This is the show where we talk all things leadership, personal development, and really just becoming that best version of self by connecting to self. And we do it all through the lens of what it means to be a dude. I'm going to pop up my comments here. Hey, good morning, Tanya on LinkedIn. How are you, my friend? It is good to see you here. All right, guys, before we dive into today's topic, I want to update you on a couple of things. So the website, mikecameron.ca, if you go to the community tab there, we've started creating just a different online environment away from some of the negativity of some of the other social platforms. I'm going to be doing a giveaway for both one of my books and a t-shirt, Make Beautiful Shit Happen t-shirt, for everybody that is registered there. It's free to register. I've got some special things that I put there, some additional posts, some content that I put up on the membership site that is the only place you can get it. So I would love it if you would come over and join our community over there. Good morning, Travis. Travis, you need to hop over to mikecameron.ca. I would love to have you part of that community as well. It would be great to see you over there. My objective is to have 100 of us at minimum over on that site by the end of this year. And I think, I don't know, we're maybe somewhere around halfway there. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't really looked, haven't really pushed. But we've got all of the setup. The events are set up on there. So if anybody has events they want to share, you can let me know and I will put those up there as long as they relate to sort of personal development, that kind of thing. And we'll share that. And again, this is where I do all of my coaching stuff. So any of my premium subscribers, that's a terrible way of putting it, I feel. But anyways, enough about that. Let's talk about men and self-compassion. And maybe more importantly, the importance of it and the struggle with it. Why we need it. You know, I don't know that we have this conversation enough. I feel like we have this conversation with women a lot as they try and rise to a level of equality, which is fantastic and much needed. But there's also another conversation that needs to be had around how men show up in this world and how we lack that self-compassion, how we put so much pressure on ourselves to perform, to succeed, to excel, to be the provider. And we don't take credit for the work that we do, but we're very quick to beat the shit out of ourselves for the work that we don't do. And it's been very interesting for me this last week in particular. I've seen this come up again and again. I recycled the thumbnail image from today from I don't know, it was probably like episode 15 or something. So I've been having this conversation for quite some time But as Michelle always reminds me, you can't just have the conversation once and think it's done. That's one of the challenges I have. I want to show up here every single morning and come up with something brand new for you guys to talk about. But the reality is, not all of you have seen all of the episodes, and not all of you need to hear it at any given time. So having these repeated conversations, I think, is absolutely critical, absolutely important, if we are in fact going to move the needle on any of this. And we have to. Societally, we absolutely fucking have to make some changes. We have to move the needle. You know, when we look at suicide rates, men commit suicide 3 times more, men experience death by suicide 3 times more often than women. And that's a problem. That tells me that there's something wrong. I think we know that there's something wrong, yet we're hesitant to have the conversation. And part of the problem is because there's been this inequity between men and women for centuries, this imbalance of power, that men have held that balance of power, that we tend to focus on bringing others up, which is fantastic. That's part of the equation. But the other part of the equation is really removing the pressure, removing that stigma from men of having to perform all the time, having to be at their best, having to show up and have all the answers. That pressure is immense, whether we acknowledge it or not, and whether, again, whether we consciously acknowledge that. I can sit here and I can talk about this all day long. That in and of itself doesn't necessarily lessen the weight. It doesn't necessarily lessen the burden. My feeling of wanting to provide, of wanting to succeed, of wanting to be the best, to dominate, is still there. Like, it's so ingrained. And that is a problem, because when we cannot live up to those expectations, and oftentimes they're these false expectations, they're unrealistic expectations. We tend to put on this mask of fake it till you make it. Well, what if that becomes fake it till you break it, which is what often happens. As men, we fake it, we fake it, we fake it, and we have this mantra of fake it till we make it running through our head. I just need to keep showing up. I just need to keep showing up. I need to put on that mask. I need to fake it till I make it. Yet, what the data will tell us, what statistics will tell us, is more often than not, men will fake it until they break it, and everything falls apart. And that's when we get that behavior, that societal behavior that we don't want to see. That push, that pressure causes those underlying feelings of inadequacy, cause some of those behaviors, the suicide rates, the violence against women, the oppression of women, the oppression of people of color. This all comes from insecurity and a lack of self-worth and a need for performing, a need to measure up. And we don't have that compassion for self when we can't. So, one part of the equation is to reduce those expectations, to reduce that pressure. And again, that doesn't mean you can't fucking perform. This is what drives me absolutely insane. Sometimes when I have these conversations, the pushback I get from sort of those stereotypical hypermasculine dudes is, oh, you want everybody to get a participation ribbon and nobody competes? No, I don't. Absolutely, I don't. But I do want us to take a pause. And I do want us to have the courage to look in the mirror and say, where are some of these tropes actually hurting us? And where can we just slow down a little bit? Practice that pause and reflect on some of these things. Again, as men, we have this intense inner critic that wants to beat the crap out of ourselves. And I've had 2 coaching clients in particular this week that's been their mantra. They didn't have a great week, which is okay. We don't always have great weeks. Sometimes we fall off the wagon. Sometimes we don't do what we wanted to do. Sometimes we don't achieve those milestones that we put in front of us. And quite often, as men in particular, we beat the crap out of ourselves. We can't find forgiveness. We can't find self-compassion, which I find super, super interesting. Good morning, Stacy. Travis says we are so competitive. Watched a football movie with Will Smith about CTE and it was all about the unhealthy masculine. Yeah, absolutely. So as guys, when we don't live up to our self-imposed expectations or what we believe are societal expectations, how we think the world needs us to show up, when we can't do that or don't do that, when we're faking it, we start to whip ourselves, beat ourselves. That's self-flagellation. And that's not healthy. That inner critic. And what I find most fascinating about this tendency, this trait, is that while we're very quick to beat the crap out of ourselves, when we fail at something, when we don't accomplish quite what we want to accomplish, we very rarely, internally at least, take credit for the things we do that move us forward. This was part of a conversation I had this week too with a client. He talked about how all of the stars are just aligning right now, all of the good things that are coming in his life. That's one of the things we do as we reflect on this past week. What were the wins? We need to celebrate the wins. So he went through his list of wins, and this week was a big win week for him. And he wanted to keep going. And I stopped him and I said, hang on. I said, before you move on, I want to ask you this. What did you do to cause those things to happen? And he was very quick to say, nothing. They just all came together at the same time. And I said, bullshit. What did you do to cause those things to happen? So we stopped and we reflected. And then he started listing the things that he had done, the steps he had taken that were different. One of these objectives he's been sitting on for 3 years. Yet it's finally coming together now. Why is that? It was because he got intentional with his actions, his behavior, his mindset, his values. This is what I teach. It's about getting intentional. So when we took that pause and we reflected on why are all these things coming together for you? It's because of the actions you've taken. It's because of the behaviors you've taken. It's because of that shift in mindset. It's because you've become aligned with your values. As much as I believe in that, universe has got your back. And sometimes you just need to put things out there. Good things don't happen if you don't do the work. So men, my challenge for you is to start creating a practice of recognizing the things you do to make those good things in your life happen. They don't have to be significant. They don't have to be huge. But pay attention to them. Become mindful of them. Take that pause. Pat yourself on the back a little bit. And when it comes time to be that critic, to say, you know what? I fucked up this week. I slept in every day this week. I didn't get my yoga in. Again, it's easy to say because I'm sure all of you are saying, yeah, it's in the past. We can move forward. Yeah, it's easy to say. Yet somewhere deep down inside, we still hold on to this shame and blame game. And it can be devastating. It can be incredibly damaging. So I would encourage you to also practice that pause and look at those feelings of not living up to who you want to be. Where does that come from? Where does that stem from? Probably it goes back a lot of years. Probably there's a lot to unpack there. But don't just brush it off into the past is the past. I got to move forward. Yeah, absolutely. That's true. Intellectually, we know that's true. But that's easier said than done. So just taking that pause and reflecting on those deep inner feelings, maybe that lack of self-worth, maybe that feeling that I'm not worthy of love and belonging. My editor, Linda, wrote a nice blog piece the other day. She talked about, she was on a research trip, ended up chatting with this homeless man. And they got talking about wants and needs. And I won't do the story justice, but in the end, he said, but that's not really what I want. Do you know what I really want? And she kind of paused and waited. And of course, when you're talking to a homeless person, you probably the first thought is, I want money. I want some of your spare change. He said, I want love and connection. And isn't that what we all want? Is love and connection. And that feeling that we're not worthy of love and connection is where things start to go off the rails. Finding ways to reconnect with that inner self and just practice that. You know, again, that self-love thing, it's so true, but I hate it so much because it becomes just this sort of platitude that we throw out there all the time. What does it really mean? How do we really practice it? Because it's not fucking easy. You know, we can rattle off all these things like they're super easy to do. This finding self-compassion piece. Easy. Just be compassionate for yourself. You know, one of my favorites is treat yourself like you're treating your best friend. What would you do for them? What would you tell them? You're never going to silence that inner critic. So cultivate that relationship with them. Have a conversation with that inner critic. That's a great practice as well. You know, that little guy that sits on your shoulder says, dude, you're such a fucking loser. You didn't get any workouts in this week. Have a conversation with that guy. Yeah, but dude, this entire year, I've worked out almost 6 days a week, every week. Yeah, last week was a little poor. Cut me some slack, man. Have a conversation with him. Don't just blindly accept what he says. You know, sometimes we need that inner critic to keep us moving, to keep us motivated. But don't let him own you. Don't let him plant those nasty thoughts that are going to get in your head and start to fester. You know, Anne talked about writing and making those lists, and finding ways to get those things out. I'm just going to pop over to comments and things now and catch up with you guys. Anne says, men do have that pressure, although this is the first time I've actually thought about it. Something, again, that I think most women don't put on themselves. Putting pressure on oneself for whatever reason is very damaging. Yeah, and it's so true. Like, it's not something we talk about often, but the weight is so heavy and it's so real. And says many people associate self-love with conceit, and they're two very different things. Absolutely. Absolutely. But again, it's that being mindful of how you show up. Because there's a big difference between showing up and giving yourself a pat on the back and saying, you know what? I'm really proud of the fact that I got in 6 workouts this week. There's a difference between doing that and being proud of self and standing up and saying, you suck, you only got 3 workouts in, I got in 6. That's a different thing. Travis, you're not seeing all the comments because some of the folks are over on mikecameron.ca/live. I'm broadcasting all over the place. I really do want to build that community of resource, of best practice, that community of practice over on mikecameron.ca. So I'm starting to expand that out a little bit. So that's why you're not seeing all the comments. That's why I read them. Travis, you've got a whole bunch of stuff here. Let me go back. We don't think about pulling people up. Heaven forbid they be better than us. The pat on the back, I needed to hear that. I rarely do that. I often get lost in serving and doing. Honestly, Mike, you're often my pause. So thank you, brother. Anne says, Travis, come on over. And you are so good to me. And you are so good to me. You know, that's one thing I'm gonna wrap up with. But I want to wrap with the importance of, okay, so we've talked about that self-compassion piece. Anne sent me a really nice note yesterday that talked about how my work impacted her. And little did she know, yesterday morning, I was just having one of those days where I thought, you know what? Who fucking cares, Mike? Nobody gives a shit about the work you do. Does it really matter? And then I got that note from Anne. And I realized that, yeah, fucking rights, it matters. Absolutely, it matters. So what if we did that for ourselves? What if we wrote ourselves a little testimonial? What if we had that inner critic write a testimonial for real? Or what if we wrote one to our inner critic? You know, I might try that today. I haven't done that before. I haven't tried that practice, but I think that would be a good one. Write yourself a little testimonial. Give yourself a little pat on the back today. Recognize where you've done well, because I can guarantee you recognize where you failed. Take some time to recognize where you've done well today. Where have you showed up? All right, my friend, if you get a chance, I would love it if you would hop on over to the website, mikecameron.ca, register there. It's completely free. I want to start having these community conversations over on the website as well, so that we can grow that community. And really, again, I would love to get away from some of the negativity I see on some of the other social platforms and really build a community of like-minded men and the women that love them, to lift each other up, support each other, share best practices for guys like Travis and Garth and all of these individuals that work in this space. There's so many good men doing really good work to really try and elevate the consciousness of today's man, of the modern man, so to speak, and move into that new paradigm, that new reality of masculinity. One where we don't have to have that equality conversation anymore. If we can evolve men, if we can grow as men to be more self-confident, not less, and I think there's a tendency to think that, oh, men are far too confident. They dominate. Yeah, they do that because they're insecure. The truly confident men don't need power over. They don't need to dominate. That's a conversation we're going to have maybe tomorrow. The power over conversation. All right, my friend. As always, continue to make beautiful shit happen. Don't forget to practice that pause. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I am incredibly grateful for you all. Have yourself a great